Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video we're going to go over some of the changes that we have in the recent 4.2 PTU patch that started out as Wave 2 and we have now moved to Open PTU so anyone is able to join. I did try earlier today to get some footage of the Apex Valakkar, getting that, but it was so contested and so desync I have not been able to get to that yet, so I'll hopefully be able to do that in another video, but we're going to go over it. There's a lot of other really interesting changes in these patch notes. So we got ships to change, we got changes to ships, we got the addition of flight blades to shops, we got all sorts of stuff to talk about. So we're going to go over some of that and test a few things. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the big thing with this build is of course going to be that the final phase of the Stormbreaker new activity has been added. That includes the addition of the Calling Tower, which now enables you to, when you get the Valakkar egg, you place it in that, and that is how you summon the Apex Irradiated Valakkar. If you've probably seen some videos by now. I mean, there's some other creators that have made some already, and it looks really insanely cool so far, and I'm really excited to see it myself. Like I said, I haven't been able to get to find it quite yet, or just be able to get to that, but hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to do that. But that is one of the big things in this patch, and then we do have a lot of new changes and additions to some other things that let's talk about now. So first, under gameplay, there is some further Stormbreaker polish, the gameplay, art, audio, and performance polish pass, and the introduction of the final phase of the activity. Already touched on that. They're continuing to polishing up like the weather and the NPCs and all those sorts of things, the locations. There was audio mixing polish, so mix changes to ambient sounds within the Stormbreaker locations, further rain ducking audio mixing, slightly limited the dialogue wildlines from the security NPCs, and increased the volume of planetary wind game-wide. So some further minor adjustments to some things. I think the most interesting thing there is just probably increasing the wind volume across everything. So I don't know. I will say it seems like when I was flying my Idris on Pyro 1 earlier, either I'm just a bad pilot, or it seems like the wind or the weather there, or the atmosphere, does have an effect, like pretty significant effect, on flying the really big ships like the Idris and the Polaris, because I was struggling to even get off the ground and stay going upward. And I feel like it hadn't been that difficult in previous patches, so there may have been some changes that with the wind, or I don't know if that really affects it, but it feels like something changed that made it a little bit more difficult to control those really big ships. So it actually might be worth it to take smaller ships in, like an Asgard or a Corsair or a Connie or something like that. So I think those would fare quite a bit better than the big capital ships in the Atmosphere Pyro 1. Now next we have a very interesting change. So all medbeds will now protect players from damage for a small amount of time after respawning. 30 seconds or leaving the bed ends the effect. So you basically have a little bit of invincibility for a couple of seconds, which is really nice. I know that it's kind of an issue at the Lazarus locations on Pyro 1, because there's places there you can set your spawn point, and it's really easy to just spawn camp that room. So this will probably help mitigate that a little bit. I think it's still going to be an issue. I don't even know technically if like being able to respawn there is actually intended, or if it's just kind of a bug at the moment. So we'll have to see what ends up happening with all that. But a very interesting little change there. Make sure to let me know what you think about that in the comments. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think there's something else they should do? I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on that. And then elsewhere in the gameplay section, we have adjusted the radiation sickness thresholds for tier 3, 2, and 1 injuries so you actually get them. So I have not actually had this happen because I've pretty much just been wearing the radiation suit whenever I've been at these locations. But I think if you're in like just normal armor for long enough and you're outside there, you can obtain those heavier the tier injuries, and then you can only get fixed on the med bed. So we'll have to see if that actually ends up having any big effect. I've heard that you're able to survive fine in like heavy armor out in the radiation and the heat for like 15 minutes. So we'll have to see what ends up happening there, but a very interesting little change. And then next we have some shop additions. So first, and something that I'm sure many people are very much looking forward to, is they have added flight blades to shops. So the new flight blades for some of the different ships that were like the Arrow, or no, was the Arrow one? Maybe the Arrow was one. But like the Gladius, the Pisces, the Hammerhead, the Redeemer. So you should be able to buy those in shops now. Now I checked in the Pyro like ship part shops, and I did not see them there. So I'm thinking you're probably going to find them in like an Omega Pro that you would go to a New Babbage, maybe Center Mass possibly. Although technically that's more for like ship weapons. So I would say like component shops. So maybe even like Platinum Bays at stations. So we might go check that out here in a couple of minutes. We'll see possibly if we can find where you might be able to buy those. But really good to see that those are in. Hopefully, I'm just hoping CAG does not sell any more of them and that we can just have them put in game. And hopefully there's some more ships that are added for them as well. So that's a pretty big thing there that I'm sure many of you are probably looking forward to. Then the next thing is the Volt shotgun magazines have been added to shops, so that's a good change because the first couple of patches you were only really able to find them in really small quantities where they spawned at the Pyro 1 locations. So I would assume probably going to be at any major like shop for weapons at like space stations or anything like that. You should be able to get them just like with the Volt rifle and Volt SMG ammo, so it shouldn't be a big issue to obtain those magazines. And then finally for the shop editions, they also haven't added the environmental suit to shops. I assume that's going to be the Sterling radiation suit. I checked around when I was in Pyro, some of the weapon shops the armor shops there, and I did not see it available there. It might be available some other places in Pyro that I just don't know about. I'm sure it's going to be available at a lot of the armor stores in Stanton. But you can buy that. You can also loot it, though, pretty easily at the Pyro 1 locations. A lot of NPCs that are outside will spawn with them on. You can just kill them and then just tractor them inside, and then you can swap your armor. So it's not super difficult to get a hold of them, but good to see that they have been added into the shops anyways. And then the next thing under locations, we just have a slight change. They have increased the Pyro 4 temperatures. I was there earlier and I didn't really notice, like it wasn't significant enough that it would cause really heat issues. So I don't think it'll really be that big of a deal, but just thought you might want to be aware of that. They have increased that a little bit. And then under AI, we have further juvenile/adult traversal, lightning stun strikes, and impact effects, so further polish for the juvenile and adult irradiated Valakkar. So they have some different attacks, ways they can move and things like that. And then they also increase the adult Valakkar's slam explosion radius, so making that a little bit more deadly than it already is. And from what I've heard, it sounds like the Apex can actually kind of call out to the juveniles and adults around it, and they'll move from where they are and move to where the Apex is to try and help it. So you'll have to combat the Apex, the adults, the juvenile, all of those different things. Now our next section is ships and vehicles. There was a slight reduction in the Gladius max pitch velocity. Now, interestingly, just in I think yesterday's patch, they raised the pitch, and then now they're lowering it back down again. We'll take a look at some SP viewer stats for that. And the other really big thing that I am so happy about is finally, for the Aegis Idris, they have added the missing gimbals on turrets, and they have retuned the remote turret's traversal speed. So we're going to look at that in a few minutes, test that out and see how those work, how the speeds are, how the gimbals are. I'm sure it'll feel much, much better than it was previously. We also have, there's an interesting change. If you might be able to see here. Now I'm flying an Idris P, and on that front turret there, that actually is the size 7 laser cannons that you typically only would have on the Idris M. For some reason, they are on the Idris P. I don't know if it's a bug or not, but as I'll show in a couple of minutes, there is size 6 gimbals on this turret now. So that also makes me think possibly maybe we could put size 6 weapons on this. So we're gonna head down. I'm going to Lorville right now. I'm gonna go buy some attrition 6s, and then we'll see if we can switch them in the loadout manager. And if we can't do that, see if we can manually switch them, and see if possibly we could be getting it so you could put size 6s on there. I don't know if the size 7s are meant to be permanent. That might just be a little bit of a bug on this, but we'll have to see. We're going to do some testing on it. Alright, so before we test anything with the Idris, the turrets, and trying out the different guns, we'll just quickly go over the SP viewer changes. So, first again, we have the Aegis Gladius and the Gladius Valiant. They have had their pitch drop down from 75 to 70, just undoing the change that was done the other day. The Idris M and P have had slight adjustments to their component mass. That's, as far as I'm aware, just going to be the slight increase in the extra gimbals being added there. The P notes that its turret DPS has also increased. I think that's because the size 7 cannons are showing on there as well. Again, whether or not that's a bug, I don't entirely know. And then we can see the stats for the Idris's remote turrets. So they have had quite the speed increase. So in addition to, I believe they also have gimbals. We will check that as well. In the yaw axis, they have gone from 35 to 77, and in the pitch axis, they have gone from 35 to 75. So a very significant increase in the speed that they can move around, so it should be a lot easier to track fighters, other smaller ships with those. So it'll probably be a lot more enjoyable to actually have them crewed, because they just were always really sluggish feeling, especially without gimbals on them. So we'll check that. But it's looking like the turrets on the Idris are going to be a lot more enjoyable to use. So as far as I can tell, that is all the major ship changes that we have from this patch. So now let's get on to testing some of the Idris stuff. So first I want to see if we're able to change the guns on the front nose turret from size 7s to size 6s. So we'll give it a second to load the whole thing here, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so then we'll go to vehicle weapons. We gotta find our turrets. Here we are. So as you can see here, we have the IFR W57 turret on there. And then it has, we can see Varipuk size 6 gimbal mounts. So that's what partially makes me think maybe we could put some size 6 guns on there. We don't have an option to unequip the M9As, the size 7 laser cannons, but I've noticed this is an issue across all of the different Idris turrets, like the ballistic cannon, the missile turret, all those things. You can't just unequip the guns themselves. I think it's a bug or something with them. It's really, really annoying, because then if you change it to a different turret, for some reason you lose those guns. So we're probably going to have to try and do that manually to switch those guns around and see if that works. But interesting to check that out. So let's go pull the Idris up, pull those guns up as well, and see if any of that works. Now I am running into some issues straight away. When I try and move the attrition 6 to the freight elevator, I get a message that says elevator overloaded, which makes no sense. These guns should fit just fine in an extra large freight elevator. So probably what I'm going to have to do to test this is I'm going to have to go up and manually take the size 7s off, and then store the ship, and then see if it lets me equip the size 6s in the vehicle loadout manager. So we're going to have to pull up a different ship to then fly up to the top of the Idris there and get that all switched around. So let's go ahead and do that and see if it works. Alright, so now we've got our little ship. We've got the Idris pulled up and the ports unlocked, so now we're going to go land on top of the Idris and see if we can tractor beam the big size 7 cannons off. And then we're going to hopefully see if we can put on the size 6s, see if that happens to work. Now we're on top of the Idris. We're not going to go right there, because that will probably all just fall through the ship probably. So, we should be able to tractor these size 7s off. Yep, they come off nice and easy. We will just kind of drop them down. I'll put them in the freight elevator in a minute or two. But they do come off. And there's the second one. And we can see here, there's our little gimbal. So there we go, size 6 gimbal. I'm not going to take that off. But now let's go ahead and store the ship and those guns. And let's see if we can put the attritions on. And then after that, we are going to look at the turrets, the gimbals on that, and also the remote turrets, see the changes that we have there. Now what confuses me is these giant guns appear to snap to the freight elevator just fine, and they're size 7. They're even bigger. So I don't know what's up with why it can't just pull size 6 guns up. Must just, I don't know, some bug as usual. So who knows? But let's go ahead. We'll send that down, and then we'll store the ship and see what happens. See if we can equip those attritions. Alright, so now, moment of truth. We got the ship stored. We'll wait 5 years for the ship loadout to come up again and see if we can equip these. Alright, so here is our empty turret. And then if we click here... man. Looks like we only have the option to put those M9As back on. Now, it seems like when you manually take them off, then you can put them back on. But when they're on, then you can't unequip them. I don't know. It's really annoying. So, at least from this, because I'm not able to get the attrition 6s like up the freight elevator, and I don't really think there's any other way I can get them because they don't go on any other ship, so I can't like equip them somewhere else. So unfortunately I won't be able to test that out any further. But so I think it's possible size 6s could go on this turret, but for some reason the size 6s just won't go up the freight elevator. So, for now, looks like we can just put those size 7s back on there. So, a little bit of a disappointment. I might use a little bit of further testing, and maybe if there's some better results, we'll put it in another video. But now let's go ahead and finish up by looking at the gimbals and additions there to the Idris turrets. Alright, so first let's take a look at, let's just try one of the size 5 turrets that's on the sides of the bridge. See how those work, if those gimbals are working, see how the range is on those. Okay, so as we can see here, the turrets now have gimbals. So again, this is how it was before. It's way slower, way more difficult to aim. Just this makes it so much easier. And then there's another mode where when you have something targeted, it'll give you that this little circle. As long as you keep it in the circle, it kind of auto aims, although it's not super effective beyond maybe 700 meters. So otherwise, if you go into the manual gimbal, you can aim at like a pip for it. But this feels way nicer, and I think is going to make these size 5 turrets and all the turrets on the Idris hopefully a lot more challenging for fighters and other ships to have to deal with, seeing as it'll be a lot easier for them to hit them. So yeah, so that's one of those the size 5 turrets. Now, I did want to also check the big size 7 turret up at the front. Let's go see if that one has also had gimbals added to it. And I realized when I took the weapons off, there was gimbals on there, so I would assume it's gonna, you know, do the gimbal-y things. But we'll just go check anyways and see how it looks. Alright. And look at that. Got gimbals. They move pretty quick for such large guns. Again, this front turret does not move around as fast, but again, it has significantly larger weapons, so it makes sense. These things are very, very powerful. I think they do like 2200 alpha each, so 2 shots, if you get those on target, that's like 4500 damage or so. But yeah, the gimbals seem to work on them, so nothing too crazy there. And lastly, let's go take a look at the remote turrets, because on there we're going to check if there's gimbals, and then there's also supposedly the improved rotation speed on them. So let's go ahead and finish up with that. Alright, we'll test the front right turret. Just cycle the power. Let's go into the turret, and look at that. We got gimbals. And these rotate quite a bit faster, I will say. So these are going to be a lot easier to keep accurate. The nice thing about these turrets is the ones on the front do fire forward pretty easily. And you got a lot of side protection. You can shoot above, you can shoot below, again to the sides, you can shoot back. It has pretty good firing arcs. So with these, I mean, you can have that dual size 7, the two remote turrets on the front, so 2 size 4 weapons, and then there's the 2 main forward facing bridge turrets, so that'll give you another 4 size 5. So 4 size 5, 4 size 4, and 2 size 7. That is a lot of forward facing firepower. And then depending on like kind of the angle the ship is at, the rear, the top side rear dual size 5 turrets can also shoot forward. So yeah, there's a lot of firepower on the Idris. and I am just glad that we're able to use it a little bit more effectively with the capacitor boosts and these turret changes, the gimbals, the speed, all those sorts of things. I think it's really going to level up the combat that we have with the Idris instead of just a solo pilot with the laser or the railgun or things like that. So I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. What do you think about the Idris changes? What do you think if you've seen the Apex Valakkar? I'd love to hear what you think of it. Again, I'm hoping to be able to summon it tomorrow, and I'll hopefully be able to get a video up for y'all to see that. And but yeah, let me know any of your thoughts, and if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know those in the comments as well. I'll do my best to look out for those and respond to as many of them as I can. And if you like the video, feel free to subscribe to see more Star Citizen news and updates. And until next time, I will see you in the verse.